Hello and welcome to the Candidate Lounge podcast. My name is Tom Bennet and as ever, I'll be your host. If you're tuning into this episode, I'm pleased to tell you that you've stumbled across what is the first of our Sky Betting and Gaming Tech Fest mini podcast series. Tech Fest is an annual SBG event designed to bring together the SBG technology community, inspire collaboration and learning, and showcase some of the magnificent achievements and the weird and wonderful things that we've achieved within tech over the year previous. Now, we may be sat at home waiting for the office, the shops, and let's face it, the pubs to reopen, but we still wanted to make sure that this went ahead and we didn't lose the opportunity to celebrate some of the highlights and lowlights of 2020, look forward to what's happening in 2021 and share our tech strategy, encourage continued collaboration, and just bring people together, have some fun, and get excited about the year ahead. So TechFest 2021 is a go, and we're running this mini podcast series to complement and offer a sneak peek into some of the amazing talks that have gone on throughout the week. TechFest 21 is split into 4 separate tracks that run parallel to one another: Our Future, Connect With, Share, and Entertain. Now, to present this mini-series, I'm joined by a good friend of mine. Some listeners may know him as a speaker, an agile coach, and indeed a podcast presenter in his own right. Tom Hoyland, welcome to the Candidate Lounge, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for having me, Tom. Looking forward to this one.
Absolutely. So, TechFest 2020, what was it all like?
Well, it was really good. It had a really great atmosphere. You know, it's the first time I'd been to one in Leeds. Absolutely blindingly good. It was great to hear other tribes talk about what they're up to. We saw some amazing prototypes. It was really good to see the work that the data tribe has been doing around the Google Cloud stuff. Brilliant. And it's been even better to see what's come from that over the last year. Really impressive things. But, you know, this year, is it going to be the same? I don't think it is going to be the same. Obviously, we are going to be further apart. But you know what? I reckon we can come close together.
Absolutely. Now, our first guest in the TechFest series is one of the OGs when it comes to mobile development in Yorkshire and SBG. He's going to be talking to us about the journey of iOS tech and beyond, and there is no one more qualified. Mr. Adam Rush, welcome to the Candidate Lounge podcast.
Hello. You're making me blush.
Wasn't intentional. How are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, very well. It's definitely strange times. So I definitely feel the need for pub and other things. But yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really keen to sort of discuss a little bit more about the mobile space and what's going on here.
Awesome. Well, let's dive straight into it then. Let's talk a little bit about what you're going to be presenting at TechFest this week.
So it's all about that. So the title of the talk is the iOS tech journey and beyond, and it's kind of, you know, it's a one-liner of what we've been going through in the last sort of 18, even 24 months, really. The mobile tech here at SBG was almost non-existent. You know, we had a couple of engineers, and we formed a whole new team because the challenge which kind of was imposed to some degree from Apple was to, you know, we really need to start building the app more native. So it's about that journey, and I use a great analogy of going from baby stage to going through the ages. You know, we go through baby to toddler to almost teen and then adult, and we're kind of going into that toddler phase and going up to sort of teenage phase. We've built a lot. We've built a lot of the native stuff, and we've started to build the frameworks and the processes around this so that we can scale it up. You know, we can go bigger if we need to. So it's kind of a bit of an analogy of the journey going from almost nothing to what we've got now.
Awesome. And just for anyone who's listening who isn't fully aware of sort of what the difference is between what we had and the sort of fully native offering that we're moving towards, can you just sort of shed a bit of light on that?
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And it's the mobile space is it's still quite niche, although despite the sheer size of it. So there's not a huge understanding of it. The app we had across, to be honest, the whole company across our gaming and betting suite was primarily web, which means it's a sort of an app container that loads the betting website or the gaming website. And so the conversion was to become less dependent on the website and actually start utilizing some of the Apple components that are provided to us and start building it out using that kind of operating system capabilities.
That sounds like a big piece of work then. So if we've got this app that people already enjoy using, we've got a web app, and we want to go down this native route, how do we start thinking about breaking that problem down? And what things do we focus on first? Where do we go native first?
Yeah, so this is where we go into the sort of talk in more detail. We decided very quickly actually that we couldn't do a big bang. We couldn't really afford as a company of this size to go for a full rebuild. Just stop what we're doing, rebuild the whole app from scratch, and try and deliver that to over 1 million customers. It's just not something we could risk doing. So we started breaking down what a sportsbook app should look like, especially when it comes to mobile apps. It's totally different sort of experience, and then sort of, as well as that, start addressing some of the Apple challenges. So we focused on the homepage. It's the first kind of screen that customers will see. So we focused on that. We also focused around the transactional side, around the bet placement, so where customers strike the bet. These are kind of the core journeys that we had to get right, and that's kind of what we focused on. And then it's now starting to break down the next legs of work.
Fantastic. So how did it change? Let's say that I landed on the homepage before, and I'm landing on that homepage now, this new native world. What's the experience that I'm getting? Is it fast? Is it more interactive? Is it more stable? What kind of product we're talking about here?
Yeah, so actually speed is high. Actually, we I think it was about 30% of speed we made the app quicker as part of this work, because when you're booting up an app and then calling and loading a website, you're sort of relying on all the packages that website loads.
Yeah.
So before you can sort of let the customer in to use the application, it's all a little bit technical, that, but so we kind of removed a lot of that so we can get the customer in much faster as the app's progressively loading in the background. We created like we call it the shimmer loading. You'll see it a lot on social media websites and other apps, but it's this concept of progressively loading content as you're loading the app, and it gives that real sense of I'm in the app. This is great. The speed was brilliant, and things are just progressively loading in, and it's that kind of psychological, this is a really fast product.
Yeah, I like that idea. And when you see a lot of the modern web apps these days, it gives you that indication that something's happening in the background. It doesn't leave you wondering, exactly what's going on, as opposed to, like just, bumping up a web frame in an app, which is obviously, a degraded experience. So one of the things that I'm really interested in is that 30% number that you said there. That is a pretty good number. Do you want to expand on that a bit?
Yeah, it's a really hard statistic to measure, because what is the end result? Is it when you've just shown the first screen? Is it when all the content's loaded? It's very difficult. And as well, people using mobile devices, they're on the train, tube, in an office building, so you've got all these kind of conditions that affect the load time. We base it basically when the homepage is visible, and yeah, on an average we get between 5 and 6 seconds on average for the customer to get in. We don't really know what the benchmark would be, but we see that as a good average number to get the customer in into the app. It's not something we focus too much on, because like I said, there's a lot of stuff that can affect that app speed, but it is certainly a good metric to keep an eye on.
I think it's worth saying as well is that whilst all these improvements are amazing, there were consequences of not delivering this piece of work, right? This is something that as a team and a business, we and you guys had to deliver, and there were timescales against them, pretty aggressive ones, if I'm right. So what's that process like, and how has it been sort of meeting those deliverables that have been set, not by us, but essentially by Apple and the iOS marketplace?
Yeah, this is where I like my analogy, because when we were in baby phase, we had to almost crawl and run before we even had anything in place. So we hired very quickly, as you know.
I do.
And we made the decision to, because we were going to have to build these suite of components very quickly. We had to set the groundworks in place in an engineering form. We had to build skeleton classes. Almost really, it was architecture at the nth degree. We were creating actual files. This is where it's going to sit. This is because we didn't want to end up with a massive technical debt in 3 to 6 months time. So we went to the nth degree to get that right. And then once we got that delivered, again going into the 12 to sort of 18-month stage, and we built up that real strong relationship with Apple. We've got people we talk to now regular at Apple to sort of show them the roadmap we're doing and stuff like that. And once we'd got to that place, we could almost just not slow down, but just take a breath a little bit and really start defining how we build stuff going forward. What is the overall architecture and software design, and just what is the sort of medium to long-term journey on that?
I think one of the things that you've mentioned there is obviously engaging really closely with Apple, and obviously you'll be engaging closely with the other kind of like the app stores and the marketplaces. What's it like then? I mean, speaking from a kind of like an agile delivery perspective, what's it like engaging with those communities? Because we want to be able to go fast. We want continuous delivery. We want continuous feedback. How do we engage with those communities, get apps out to our customers, and still work in a continuous integration, continuous delivery environment in a really agile way?
Yeah, it's hard. It's we're very different to a typical web stack in the fact that you have this rapid cycle of pushing ideally small code changes out. But there's a lot you can do in the mobile space, and a lot we have done. So we've built up a whole pipeline, CI, continuous integration setup. It's on the back of Jenkins that routinely builds our pull requests. It executes unit tests. It also runs our automation suite, and it quickly feeds back if there's any quick problems. And the idea is to sort of fail quickly on these small pull requests, and then it travels through the sort of board, the sprint board, and we get that merged in. And then every month we've committed to the business to sort of do a monthly release. Maybe in the future we'll do this more often, but it was sort of a good monthly routine for us. And we cut the release. We go through a service called Test Flight, which is a beta testing that's now owned by Apple. And then we send it to Apple for review, and Apple have a sort of gated way of getting apps onto the App Store. And this is great because it protects the App Store from lots of the negative stuff that might appear, but also it is a dependency we have. It's something we have to go through. But Apple they've massively over improved their ways of working in this space. It's we can get an app approved now within 24 to 48 hours. And I remember in the early days, sort of 7 years ago, it'd take a couple of weeks. So they've committed to a sort of 24 to 48 window. Don't get me wrong, we do often hit longer timescales. It's sort of a rough figure, but so we're we can be in a position where we could potentially deploy an app to customers within 3 to 4 days. It is possible, and maybe even quicker. So this kind of idea of Apple really preventing you from getting updates out is becoming no longer of a big issue. So it's just getting that rapid cycle going, the routine going, and just getting those regular deployments out.
Well, that is music to my ears from an agile perspective. I'm really liking that. I don't know about you, Tom.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's great to see how that sort of culture's progressed and transformed, and how sort of the impact that that's had on the team, because obviously you've grown quickly. The team's obviously had to mature quite quickly throughout the period of time that we've been discussing. But just for our listeners who perhaps aren't quite so familiar with the product, I'm going to put you on the spot here and just ask you a question around sort of around peak times throughout the sort of sporting calendar. What's the traffic like moving through the app, and how many users are we dealing with at sort of set times?
To put it in, to just start, like to put it in perspective, the numbers are. I don't think people quite realize the volume going. Like, sometimes I sort of look, and I'm just like, is there really that many people using the app? It's like, but yeah, to put it in perspective, we have about 57% of the betting that we have at Sky Bet going through the iOS app, which obviously we can't sort of divulge into too many numbers, but so you're looking at over half is going through the iOS app. So we tend to hit over 1 million customers unique at a peak time launching the app. So it's numbers where you're like, oh, wow, that's that's incredible, and it's really nice because the teams we have here are brilliant. We've gone through a lot. There's been lots of change. We're building at pace, but we're also keeping an eye on quality and things. And it's really nice for the squads because the numbers that come through that are using the components that they're building is really rewarding, I think.
Yeah, and just to sort of put that in perspective, you're talking hundreds of bets per second, tens of thousands of bets and logins per minute at sort of peak times in the sporting calendar. And is there a pressure associated to sort of working on sort of software and components that are catering for that sort of traffic? And because the success of and the revenue of the business hinges, I guess, on the performance of the app during these peak times. Is there pressure associated with that as a team?
We try to avoid any pressures coming down to the squads, and even for me, there's no real pressure there, and I think that's what creates the quality, just the atmosphere of let's do it. We don't focus on like the things that are going could go wrong or whatever. We focus on the positive stuff, the quality of the things we're building. And just reflecting over, we've just had sort of Cheltenham. We had over 1 million app launches, and we're hitting about 0.08% crash rate on the app. To put that in perspective, you're talking, maybe 1,000 crashes across, 1.5 million launches. And over my career, I've never seen anything like it. And I've been in the mobile space for about a decade. And, they normally have a buffer of sort of 10%, 10 to 15%, because phones do crash. It just happens because your phone might run out of memory and that kind of stuff. So it does happen, but I've genuinely never seen it before. And it's just like, how is so little people? And I think it's the culture of, that we've fostered in.
I think go on, Tom, go on.
I was just going to say, and the challenge, right? I guess you've got people in the team and yourself included who relish that sort of opportunity to work on a product that's being used by so many and has such a wide reach. So yeah, and sort of knowing you guys, that definitely, you can feel that sort of when you step into the squad space. Motivated people who are very much up to the challenge.
Yeah, and we sometimes forget as well, because it's like we push something out, we hit about 70% adoption of the app within 4 weeks, and it's like wow, we've just pushed them out, and like a million people have just got it on their app. So sometimes it's that realization of, oh, it's happened.
Yeah, I mean, those are some really good reliability numbers that you've mentioned. They're astronomically small when you think about the astronomically large amount of traffic that the apps see and the number of app launches that you get in, especially on days like Cheltenham Grand National. Talking about the team that you've got and kind of that culture that you've talked about, I think you've grown quite rapidly. You've gone from one team to 2 squads now. What's the cut in that squad? How do you structure it? How do you structure the work? If I was to land in your squad or one of the squads, what would I expect?
Yeah. So we initially started as one squad, and we kind of just kept growing that one squad. And that's as we were starting to build out process and how we just do things going forward. And then we kind of thought, actually, we can split off into 2. But the kind of motivation for doing that is to work more in sort of pillars of work. We had sort of different streams of work going on. But when we were in the office, we still sat together. We still do, albeit at home. But we do a lot of cross-team working. We've got engineers that will drop into Squad 1 stuff and see what they're doing. That's because we don't want to silo. We don't want to create silos of squads. We still want this sort of collaboration happening. It's one code base. We need to sort of maintain that going forward. So although we've got 2 squads, it's merely to sort of split the level of work going through and just create a little bit of focus. So we have that, and then sort of covering both squads, we've got the sort of people to sort of help and maintain the things around it. So we've got a business analyst, for example, that's spread across both squads, and we've got a multitude of product owners, 4 or 5, again, across both squads. I actually sit across both squads as well and just sort of help with the technical sort of strategy and input across both. So although we are set up in 2, there's a lot of crossover. And then, not forgetting the Android as well. We've got the Android squad who also fit into the native sort of umbrella.
Fantastic. I mean, it wouldn't be a podcast these days without asking the dreaded COVID question. How has obviously this new interesting remote way of working, how has it affected your squads? How did your squads handle it? And how are they doing now?
I'm quite glad you've asked this question, actually, because I think for us, I think everyone's done really well. I think everyone's adapted very well, myself included, although it was a shock, in the early days. I mean, I've got 2 toddlers, trying to keep them entertained is hard. And it was especially hard as squads as a whole, because again, fostering this culture, we do a lot of pairing. It's not a buzzword. We genuinely do a lot of pair working together, and we do a lot of socializing. You walk past the old squad area, we'd all be having lunch and things. And for us to just remove that almost completely overnight and to all be working from home is difficult.
I bet you've missed Andrea's pasta, haven't you? That he brings into the office.
That's what it is secretly. But it's, when you've built up the groundwork of those squads with the in-person things that we've done for so long, to just remove it overnight, it's been a huge shock for the squads. And we played football yesterday. We did 5-a-side, and it was just so nice to see some other human beings other than my wife and children.
So you've really piqued my interest. Obviously, you said you've been doing some paired working, and all of those things that served you really well when you went into this world of remote working. I am really interested in paired working. I'm advocating it all the time in the squads that I'm with. How did you manage to continue doing that going into the remote world? It's one thing sat next to somebody else, you can reach over and you can kind of take control of the keyboard, and one person can drive, one person can observe. How do you deal with that in a remote world? How do you maintain it?
Yeah, I don't think anyone's solved it. I don't know if you can, genuinely. But I think what you can do is keep reminding people of the benefits of doing it, and just keep trying. I think you can do it. Like we often do. We have Zoom set up. We'll be video calling. We don't have any licensing yet for any of the software that does it a little bit better, where you can actually take control and things. But it's just reminding people that we still want to do this. We had great benefits of it. We'll do the best we can, and that's kind of what we've been doing.
Awesome. So what does the rest of the year hold for you then, and what are you most looking forward to within the native world at SBG sort of over the next 6 to 12 months?
It's such an exciting time. We're tackling one of probably the biggest pieces of work we've done this year. We're full. we can't actually squeeze any more work in, but that's great. We've even looked at what next year holds, and for us, the next sort of 12 to 24 months is all about getting to that native goalpost, getting it pretty much fully native, and that's really exciting. So I can't wait to see what the app is going to look like, in that sort of 1 to 2 years.
Awesome. Well, anything more from you, Tom?
No, I think sounds like you've got an absolutely fantastic team going on there. Great culture. You're banging out the apps. You're releasing fast. What more can you want?
Absolutely. Well, Adam, we'll give you the opportunity to plug your Twitter handle and that of Swift Leeds, for which you are a founder.
Yes. Sorry for the plug. So I'm on Twitter, although I'm not a huge tweeter. I'm gonna admit, but you can definitely catch me on there. It's Adam9Rush as my sort of personal account. I often wang on about stuff, primarily iOS on there. And then, recently launched a conference just for Swift as a technology, which powers, a lot of the iOS apps now. So it's Swift_Leeds on Twitter, and we're launching that conference in October. Fingers crossed.
Absolutely, fingers crossed. Well, look, if you're listening to this podcast as someone external who will be interested in working within the iOS native squad here at Sky Betting and Gaming, and why wouldn't you? After hearing all that, then you can find roles available on skybetcareers.com, and there'll be a link to that within touching distance of wherever you listen to this podcast. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Tom, and thank you for listening to the Candidate Lounge podcast. Look out for the next episode in our Tech Fest mini podcast series soon. Take care.